Do I regret selling the Sony ZVE1 for the A7C II? I sold the ZVE1 a few months ago in order to pick up the A7C II, which honestly is my dream camera. I already have a video on it unboxing the A7C II, but I wanted to give you guys the justifications on why I sold the ZVE1 for the A7C II, the things that I've encountered, and the use cases that might apply to you guys and maybe the ones that don't as well. So we're going to talk about that in this video. I'm going to also cover what I expected that would go well with the A7C II versus what honestly surprised me. We'll be covering the physical and controls, the photo video specs, stabilization, audio, long-term usability, and the firmware-driven upgrades. So for the first one, the physical features and controls, the A7C II right now is filming for me on my tripod. I only have one body, but the A7C II has one EVF, has an EVF on it, and the ZVE1 doesn't have an EVF or an electronic viewfinder where you can look through the camera. So this is a huge advantage outdoors or when it's bright, there's bright light outside, because you're able to look into your EVF without having the sun blaring on you. So if it were the LCD screen, then it would be a bit of an issue. So if you film a lot outdoors, maybe the A7C II could possibly be better for you. So you just have to assess a lot of these use cases as the video goes on and just make a tally. Maybe this one will work best, this one won't. And maybe trial and error as well. So the ZVE1 has a very creator-esque features. It is a solid camera, which we'll get to as well. But for the controls, the A7C II adds front and rear dials plus a top mode dial. So you get exposure changes. I already talked about also in another video. They also have memory recall functions. So 1, 2, and 3. So the ZVE1 is more of, it leans towards more minimalist, even if it kind of doesn't have that look. It is sort of more a minimalist camera, but they do share common things. So they have a compact full frame body, 5-axis IBIS, flip LCD. They have a 3.5mm mic plus headphones, USB-C to plug in. Also, they're both micro HDMI, which a lot of people hate. Quite frankly, micro HDMI, they just tend to snap off. So you're gonna have to spend more on cables, but it's not the end of the world. They both also have a single SD card slot. So you're watching this video because you're maybe comparing A7C II and the ZVE1. But if you are in the pro work, you're gonna use your camera in order to either make a living through freelancing, video production, or whatever. I think you should consider the cameras that have the dual SD card slots. To me, I don't know, it's just not that big of an issue. And it differs from person to person, but that is a factor that you have to consider, single SD card slot. They both have a single SD card slot. Going into the sensor and photo specs, the resolution for the A7C II is a 33 megapixel Exmor-R BSI or back illuminated sensor. And the ZVE1 has a 12.1 megapixel Exmor-R BSI. And I guess you can just think of it as more crop and print headroom on the A7C II for photos. It just favors that part. And the ZVE1 might be a little bit better for low light because it has a low, I'm not sure how the relation of the lower megapixels are, but you can just think of this as having more in the bank, more pixels in the bank for the A7C II. So the sensor as well for the A7C II is a mechanical plus electronic. The ZVE1 is electronic only sensor. Going into the mechanical versus electronic shutter, I'm gonna give the simpler version. I'm not hyper technical on the topic of mechanical versus electronic shutter. And for a lot of you, it's not gonna matter too much. So for the electronic shutter, the ZVE1, it works like scanning a page with a scanner line by line. So it's super quiet, no moving parts. So the downsides for that is under LED or fluorescent lights, you can get banding, so like lines, or flickering stripes in photos. So fast moving subjects as well may look like jello. So that would usually be called rolling shutter when you move it side to side because it's scanning it row by row. So for the A7C II, it works like a curtain opening and closing in front of the sensor all at once. So it's more reliable under tricky lighting and prevents most banding. So the downsides for that, it adds moving parts. It makes a click sound and long-term wear, which you might potentially have to replace. I haven't heard a lot of people replace that. So just be cautious that that could be a possibility. So basically think of it like shades on a window. Electronic shutter is smart glass that dims electronically but might glitch under certain light frequencies, and mechanical shutter, physical blinds you pull down, which always block or reveal the light evenly. So quite a bit of photographers on Reddit say they prefer mechanical because electronic only bodies can struggle in gyms, concerts, or offices with LED lighting. And hybrid shooters often say having a mechanical shutter is just peace of mind. You don't always need it. And honestly, for me, in my personal use case, I haven't run into any shutter issues because my shoots aren't usually in these areas that might have this issue. So just consider that for your use case and just be mindful, because not a lot of your use cases will, interact with mine as well. But honestly, I prefer the mechanical side of things. Now going into the video part for the ZV-E1 and the A7C II, you would usually think that the ZV-E1 is the more dominant one because it is for video purposes, for creators with the vlog. It basically has the same sensor as the FX3 in a smaller body. So for the A7C II, it has 4K frame rate and crop. So 4K 60, it uses the sort of APS-C crop on it. So 1.5x crop for 4K 60. So for the ZV-E1, you can get up to 4K 120, doing a separate download for that in order to update your ZV-E1. But personally, I didn't use the 4K 120 because I just didn't have a use case for it. And for me, I usually just go up to 4K 60. I thought I would get use out of the 4K 120, but I just didn't. Now going into the stabilization part. So originally, the A7C II did not have the dynamic active stabilization that we're going to talk about quite a bit. The ZV-E1 came with active stabilization and DAS, dynamic active stabilization. It's using the in-body image stabilization plus electronic crop plus AI prediction to get your shot similar to what it would look like in a gimbal moving forward, backwards. Side to side tends to have these issues where it would do the sort of the banding that you would see. But for the A7C II, because of the firmware version 2.0, it adds dynamic active stabilization, which would then have sort of the same features already as the ZV-E1, which makes it way better as opposed to what it was before. So the ZV-E1, so from what I've noticed, it tends to have rolling shutter for both cameras if you do it too aggressively. So just try to be mindful of that. Going into the autofocus section of the video, they both use the Bionz XR plus AI-based subject recognition with real-time tracking and eye autofocus. So they're both really good at autofocusing. I don't really see that big of a difference between the two, if I'm being honest, but the A7C II firmware also adds a little bit more assistance to that regard. So both of them are amazing. So going into the strengths of the ZV-E1, it has a built-in mic with 3 capsule variable directivity, which means that it would sense where you're talking from the back, the front, compared to the A7C II, which the built-in mic is a bit noisier. It's just a horrible mic. Like most most cameras that you use have horrible mic. So personally for me, I've always been using an external mic, whether that's the DJI mic or the ECM M1. So built-ins for me are not really something that I prioritize with the ZV-E1. So when I was using it, there were times where I would not use the mic, but I've come to realize that I just prefer having like better audio in general. So as my use cases have evolved over time, I think you have to also consider whether or not you're using this camera to vlog or you're actually doing some work with it. So just take that in mind, that the audio it's good on the ZV-E1, but you can obviously get better audio with a mic. And both of them do accept the Mishu. So I'm using this setup right now. I think I talk about this in a wireless setup video, where you don't need to really use a mic for a wired mic for your setup. So I think that's really amazing for both cameras. Now going into the practical and long-term usability of these cameras, handling and portability, both of them honestly are stealthy, they're light. It really makes your workflow easy to use and just easy to bring, which I also prioritize. So both of these cameras are amazing in that regard. The only thing is that the A7C II, because of how hybrid in its sense is, I am able to use it for multiple like events, whether I need photo, video. I'm able to get this set up in my bag. So for the ZVE1, it kind of is weaker in the photo side, but with the A7C II, I can get the video to a point where I really like it. One other usability factor for the A7C II that I really like is that the anti-dust feature on it is amazing. So what happens is that the A7C II, whenever you close the camera, the shutter closes on itself, so you're able to kind of prevent dust from coming in, which is an amazing feature that I didn't think would be as useful as I've been using it now. But compared to the ZVE1, where it didn't have that mechanical shutter, I find that I feel more comfortable using the A7C II, just switching out. It's become a faster workflow. Another key difference that these cameras have is that when you're using it for video S-Log3, if you do use S-Log3, they both have different dual native ISOs. So for this one, the A7C II, it's ISO 800 and 3200, similar to the A7 IV. And then for the ZVE1, it's ISO 640 and 12800, which is very capable in low light. However, the reality of things is that sometimes 12,800 is just too much for my use cases. And I've found that 3200, I've been gravitating towards that because it is a good sort of middle ground whenever I have to use an ND filter. But when using the ZVE1 12,800 ISO, even at night, it's just too much that I have to either bump up the aperture or I have to use a stronger ND filter. So I've been finding that for my workflow, I've been going back to 3200 as a really good middle ground for shooting content. So which camera works best for you? If you're a hybrid photo plus video kind of person, A7C II definitely shines here with the EVF and the 33 megapixels, mechanical shutter, the anti-dust shutter thing closing. So I also think with the new firmware update, it does sort of put the A7C II above the ZVE1 in that regard. With the second one, if you do like the sensor of the ZVE1 and you're more of a video first person, you don't really shoot photos or you don't have a need to shoot photos, and I think you can go with the ZVE1 because it does have that slow-mo factor that you might want or might have in your workflow.